The year's 2001 and you just arrived back home from school. The sun outside is scorching the streets. You go to the fridge, get yourself a drink, turn on your PlayStation 2, and upon doing this, you hear this oddly soothing soundtrack that puts you in an altered state of mind. You press play and select the fugitive option, not knowing the adventure that you're about to embark on is going to change your life forever. Now, that would be a cool intro if I had any vocal capabilities to replicate the dark and gritty atmosphere James McCaffrey's voice created for us when we first heard the following sentence.
They were all dead. The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger, and then it was over.
And with this said, and with you already having seen the title of this video, there's no need for me to introduce what game we're talking about. It's Max Payne, you already know this. Released in July of 2001 for the PlayStation 2, Xbox and PC, this game was an instant classic amongst people who grew up on old school John Woo movies like Hard Boiled, A Better Tomorrow, and The Killer. The game, developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Rockstar Games, managed to sell a bit over 4 million copies worldwide to date. Upon release, it received critical acclaim for the innovation in 3D shooting, having brought the world the now famous bullet time mechanic. Before moving on to the story, I want to say that this game had to be one of the best experiences in any video game that I've ever had. From the tragic story of Max Payne to the insane and challenging gunfights the game puts you in, making every encounter you have insanely tense. Also, for a game that came out in 2001, it has a quick save option where you can save infinitely after every single gunfight, which honestly blew my mind. But more on this particular feature later. Now, let's cover the tragic story of Max Payne. The story starts off with Max finding his wife and child unalived by local thugs that ended up getting high on the previously unknown designer drug called V, short for Valkyrie. This tragic event forces Max to infiltrate the crime families of New York City, becoming a DEA undercover agent. His corrupt DEA colleague, BB, arranges a meeting between Max and his friend and former colleague, Alex Boulder, in a subway station. When Alex arrives, he is immediately killed by an unseen assassin who ends up framing Max for the murder. Now, on the run from the police and his former mob associates who now know that he's a cop, Max searches for Vinny Gognitti, Jack Lupino's right-hand man. Along the way, he breaks up a Valkyrie drug deal and discovers that Russian mobster Vladimir Lem has started a personal war with the Punchinello crime family. After catching up with Gognitti, Max interrogates him and learns that Lupino is hiding out at his nightclub. Max ends up killing Lupino before running into Mona Sachs, a contract assassin and the sister-in-law of Don Angelo Punchinello. Mona, who's looking for a personal revenge against Punchinello, ends up giving Max a drink laced with Valkyrie. Now, a bit off topic here, but I want to say that I absolutely love these insane nightmare sequences in this game. They're so damn creepy and they have that special something that I honestly feel like I only ever managed to experience in Alan Wake 2, which of course was made by the same developer. It just makes you appreciate this absolute gem of a game even more, knowing that you're able to kind of sympathize with Max in these nightmare sequences, especially when you hear Max's wife and child. It's so beautifully crafted. Anyway, back to the story. After coming back from the trip he just took, Max is found by Punchinello's mob and taken to be tortured and probably killed. But of course, he breaks free and manages to escape. Shortly after this, Max tries a partnership with Vlad, who ends up giving him a tip about a cargo ship at the Brooklyn docks carrying high-powered firearms. After securing the weapons, Max attempts to lure the Don into a trap at his restaurant, only to be ambushed himself. After escaping, Max storms Punchinello's manor and confronts the Don, only to discover that Punchinello is nothing more than a puppet in a much bigger conspiracy. After this, the manor is overrun by mercenaries who end up killing Punchinello and leave Max for dead after injecting him with a lethal dose of Valkyrie. After barely surviving another nightmarish experience, Max heads to an old steel foundry where the mercenaries are regrouping. There, he finds a hidden underground military research complex and discovers that Valkyrie is the result of the Valhalla project, which was an ex-military experiment to try and improve soldiers' stamina and morale through the use of chemical enhancers. The project was halted after a few years due to extremely poor results, but of course, as with every movie or show ever, there's a conspiracy involved, and it was later restarted by Nicole Horn, who is the face of Asia, which is her private pharmaceutical company. Here, it's revealed that Max's wife, Michelle, ended up discovering that Asia has been conducting illegal experiments with a substance called V, which ended up getting her and Max's child unalived. Max, now fully dedicated to bringing Horn down, ends up barely escaping the Asia compound after a self-destruct protocol ends up blowing up the entire complex to bits. Max, having now pieced together the fact that his DEA partner BB is on Horn's payroll and is the one responsible for framing him for Alex's murder, agrees to meet him at a parking lot complex. Here, Max ends up killing BB along with all of his men. With BB out of the picture, Max is called up to meet a secret society called the Inner Circle. Their leader, Alfred Woden, reveals that Horn was once part of their secret society and asks Max to take her down in exchange for his freedom. He promises Max that all the charges against him will be dropped and he will be free. The meeting, of course, ends up being ambushed by Horn's men, but both Max and Alfred Woden end up escaping. With everything out of the way, Max sets his sight on the main prize. Arriving at Acer's headquarters, he ends up fighting his way to the top. Now, reading this out loud makes it sound like he actually ended up grinding extremely hard to get into a position of power so you can become successful or something, like get a bigger paycheck and shit. Like, is it just me or... Anyway, moving on. After frying the entire security in the building, Max ends up fighting Horn's escape helicopter. Horn ends up making a run for it, but Max manages to destroy enough of these, whatever they are, and ends up shooting the crane or whatever this thing is, which ends up crushing Horn and the pilot to death. With Horn out of the way, Max surrenders to the police knowing that Alfred Woden would keep his word and keep him out of jail. The end. And quite honestly, this was a beautiful story of revenge, conspiracy, and corruption, especially considering the way that it was told and the fact that the studio that made this used pretty much their own staff to act out the scenes, with most of the staff even being modeled for use in game. It's just mind-blowing, especially as this wasn't a big-name studio back then. I have to say that I'm absolutely thankful for being able to experience this beautiful masterpiece over and over again. I mean, as someone who likes game development and is a huge gamer, I just can't help but admire the fact that this man ended up using his own likeness for Max Payne, which, by the way, is extremely hilarious to look at, especially when Max gets blown to bits or gets shot to hell and back. And it's not just him, the other actors used in the comic-style cutscenes as well as in-game all make for a cozy experience where you kind of feel like you're playing a game made for their own entertainment more than for a mass appeal, like most games today are. Looking at Remedy today and Remedy back then, I feel like the culture didn't really stray away too much from what made them great back in the day. It's the same studio, maybe with bigger budgets for their releases, but the principles that made them great are still actively being promoted in their work environment. I feel like when you look at their resume, you have to thank this game for kickstarting the avalanche that ended up bringing us Max Payne 2, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, Control, and more recently Alan Wake 2, which honestly to me just feels like the perfect game. Especially the segments in New York where Alan is trapped in the dark place. Those segments alone made me feel like the game itself is also a testing ground for the Max Payne remakes that Remedy hopes to combine into one big game. The gritty dark streets and beautifully realistic lighting just created the perfect visualization of what the Max Payne remakes could look like. And honestly, when I look back at the segments with Alex Casey and Alan Wake, with the green lights in the alleyway, I just can't help but think of the Valkyrie-induced segments. Playing them with the graphics that rival real life is going to be insane. And thinking about it, man, that's just insane how far this entire thing came, like from this to this. Okay, enough about what might be. Let's talk about the gameplay of the original Max Payne. Having beaten the game on Fugitive, I have to say that having a difficulty that is adjusting itself to your playstyle and to how good you are is something I honestly didn't expect from a game that is over 20 years old. The gunplay in this game is extremely well done, and I can't go on without mentioning the fact that this game introduced the now famous bullet time mechanic, which pretty much every single third-person shooter after tried to replicate. Blasting enemies with the jackhammer while flying through the air like you are in a John Woo movie has to be one of the coolest and most insane things that you can do inside of a video game. The weapon variety is good, giving you the option to use pistols, SMGs, ARs, snipers, and even some melee weapons like the bat. Of course, you also have your throwables, which give you options to clear some rooms faster without having to engage and waste bullets unnecessarily. This game, even though it's 23 years old, has aged extremely well. Apart from some minor issues with the frame rates, especially as my dumbass didn't know that there's a hotfix that fixed the DirectX issues that mess up the physics engine, leading the game to bug out and make for some hilarious situations like this. But all of this is something that developers couldn't have taken into consideration back in the day, so we can't fault them on these particular issues, especially as they are minor things that have nothing to do with the game itself and have more to do with the fact that today's hardware is so insanely powerful that the developers back then couldn't even imagine that a game like this would basically be able to run on a goddamn toaster. Like, minor issues aside, I can't help but feel like I've enjoyed this game much more now than I've done in the past when I beat it as a kid. I can't really say that much has changed, as some levels still frustrated me, but just the fact that it was made with love and by people who really deeply cared for it made me love this game so much more than when I initially played it back in the day. Okay, moving on from my feelings, the soundtrack of this game, albeit pretty much the same as in the second one, is still masterfully crafted. The menu music, man, I could just listen to this forever. The soundtrack to Max Payne's life has to be one of the most depressive kind of tunes that just feels some kind of deep sadness inside of you. It's soothing to the soul, and I don't know why. It kind of has that same effect on me as the songs from Silent Hill 2 have. They feel like songs that should make you feel sad or depressed, but in reality, they end up doing more healing than anything else. And every time I feel like I need a comfort song for a rainy day or a snowy night, this track, along with the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack, fills me with a weird sense of joy that just fits perfectly in the surrounding atmosphere of the rain or the snow. And looking at it now, I can't help but feel like this was the goal. This game's sound design is there to add another dimension to this game's already amazing gameplay, propelling it into a beautifully crafted piece of art. The soundtrack alone is something that I honestly always have playing in the back of my head. It's something that stuck with me and made me just want to sit on the start menu listening to it forever. I have to thank these two for crafting this beautiful masterpiece. If they ever end up watching this video, I have to say that you sirs created a masterpiece that will forever stay with fans of Max Payne. 23 years later, and Max Payne is still one of the best third-person shooters to ever hit the gaming market. From the gritty comic noir story and panels, the amazing gunplay and gun mechanics, to the soundtrack that propelled an already 9 out of 10 game to a 10 out of 10. There's nothing anyone can ever say that will make me hate any of these three games. Yes, there might be some issues here and there, performance and game-breaking bugs, but looking at it as a piece of art, it's the perfect thing to have on your resume, and it's a testament to how, with very little resources, a team of extremely talented people ended up creating a piece of true fiction that ended up changing their own reality for the better. Of course, none of this would be possible without the late and great James McCaffrey, that ended up cementing himself as probably one of the greatest voices in video game history, and when I played Alan Wake 2, hearing his voice coupled with Sam Lakes' face for Alex Casey just made me feel so many different emotions that I honestly never even knew existed. I mean, I didn't know I had that many emotions to begin with, but especially not for a fictional video game character. It's almost the same amount of emotion that I felt when Arthur died the first time I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and it's just something that I never thought would be possible from a video game perspective. Like, please tell me I'm not the only one that felt pure joy when James McCaffrey started talking as Alex Casey. Anyways, if you have never had a chance to play the original Max Payne, or you haven't played it in a long time, please do so before the remakes come out within the next 2 to 3 years. Like, take your time to enjoy the brilliance of what was done back in 2001, as it truly is something that not many studios at that time could have pulled off. With everything said, thank you for watching. Please be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Comment down below your thoughts on what your favorite Max Payne game is, and subscribe for more content. In my next video, I'll be covering what is probably the best game out of the entire trilogy, which is Max Payne 2. So stay silly, stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.